Well, I've always enjoyed 2D games since the 1980s, you know, from the Sinclair and Amiga days. And so the range of them is just, you know, the range of games that I like is just so large. Recent 2D games, well, obviously the PixelJunk series, stuff on the internet perhaps, but pretty much I play a lot of 3D games actually, in general. And when I play 2D games, I tend to look for games that reflect older games, you know, like reflect the old sort of nostalgic, you know, sort of 1980s style of gameplay. But Nintendo games are very, very good for 2D, you know, 2D fun. So basically anything with Mario in the title is good for me. My work in general has been inspired really by all the games that I played in the 1980s, really, because there was just such a wide range of games back then. Nothing was really pigeonholed into a particular genre or anything, so you could guarantee that the next game you went and bought would be something completely different to the previous game you just bought. You know, you didn't go to a shop and see like rows of FPSs. You know, there'd be one game that would be a train simulator that, with wireframe graphics as well, that would simulate a steam train from London to Brighton, which is a great game, by the way. I think it's called Southern Belle, I think it's called. And you know, the next game you play would be a game where you play a gyroscope on an isometric plane, and you're kind of, you know, a little bit like Marble Madness, and you're kind of going around collecting crystals and stuff. So I think I'm inspired greatly by that, you know, the 1980s huge wealth of games that there were back then. First and foremost, a tight mechanic for the main player is the key. Something that is original and it's just fun. It can be challenging, and you know, you might have to find ways to teach the player how to, you know, control the player in the game. But the important thing is to actually do something interesting and make it a fun experience, and that centers completely around the player, I think. If you look at any Nintendo game, you can see this as well. Like, they put a lot of effort into the player's controls and the cameras or whatever, you know, if it's a 3D game. And I think that's a major point. Begin at the player and then work outwards. Yes, PixelJunk in general, I think in every single game we make in the PixelJunk series, we try and bring in something that you haven't played before. This actually makes the games a bit more difficult than other games in the market, because basically you're seeing stuff you haven't seen before, and quite often it's quite subtly done. So, you know, you might think you've just seen this kind of game before, but actually when you play it, you realise it's not actually anything like any other game. You know, it just kind of gives you a sort of nostalgic feeling that you're playing a game that maybe you've seen elements of before, but definitely not arranged in this particular way. And I think that's the key to every PixelJunk title. I think every title has something in there which is just completely unique, and it's fun, you know, to learn about. Basically, we make games that are, you know, kind of for the intelligent consumer, you know, people who want to be slightly invigorated. Well, yes, I left school while in the middle of studying to go to university, because I asked my math teacher how to rotate a point in 3D, and he couldn't answer. So I kind of thought, well, that's not going to be much help for me in the future. So I applied for a job at Argonaut Software, which is like the latest at the time, in probably like 1988 or 89. You know, they'd been making 3D games for the past few years for the Amiga and the Atari ST, and I decided, well, if I want to learn to make 3D games, I need to join a company which is full of people who are making 3D games, rather than some fuddy-duddy teacher who doesn't know how to rotate a point. And it's not the case now in general education, I think. But back in the late 80s, a job in the games industry was pretty much frowned upon by the academic people out there. But now there's lots of courses, and a good computer science degree is the best way to get into the games industry, especially as a programmer, of course. Me personally, I don't split up my art, programming, and level design duties. But on the team, obviously, there are people who are devoted to art and devoted to level design. But a lot of the skills cross over. So you might have an artist who dabbles a bit in programming, or a programmer that dabbles a bit in art. Not too much, but there is some crossover. But it's the workflow is very much an iterative process. So we make stuff, we check it, we pile in a whole ton of other ideas, and then we make it, and then we check it, and then we do that repeatedly until we get the game into a state where we can actually see there's an end to it. And then once we do that, we go into a production mode, which means we just tie up all the loose ends and make the game into a final product. The art style is pretty much, I pretty much leave it up to the artists, and maybe sometimes I poke my nose in a bit to try and guide them to something a little bit newer or fresher or whatever. But it depends on the game. We try and use a different concept artist for each game. Shooter uses the same artist as Monsters, but for example, Eden uses Bion, and Races with someone else as well on the team. So I think we always try and look for something that's fresh and interesting to us, and I think that's what's important really for art. It's what's interesting to yourself. So art is in the eye of the beholder and all that. Probably the online battle side of PixelJunk Shooter 2 especially, because that's the game that has the online battle in it. Programming wise, it's very hard to deal with all the lag and trying to make the game as fun as it is in one player, but with the lag catered for in the code. And we put a lot of effort into doing that, and also just balancing the multiplayer as well. And also, when you're developing it, you have to remember that when you're developing multiplayer, you need to test it with another player, and that whole test process takes a long time to do, or is a bit of a pain. Yes, we have plenty of anecdotes, but unfortunately, they would all be censored. So mostly to do with a certain programmer we had on the team called Omar, and he made life interesting. Let's just leave it as that. Well, we're working on PixelJunk Lifelike, and we're working on another secret project, which is slightly related to the shooter universe, but more information on that in the months to come, I think. And we're also working on a couple of other things. One major, one minor, but both could be major if they're good. So it's just part of our experimentation. We like to experiment as much as we can.